What is going on, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast. The Indiana Pacers, the fourth place team in the Eastern Conference, 22-15, take down the Washington Wizards 112-104 without Tyrese Haliburton. Facci is here to talk with me about this game. And Facci, he said it before we started. It was not a good game, but it was a win, and that's all that matters.
Yes, there was not that much fun to be had. I don't think anybody was standing up in front of their TV being like, "Yeah!" I mean, there was a Jordan Nwora dunk that was a fun moment, but nonetheless, the Pacers handled business, something they were unable to do last year when Tyrese went down. I think they did it with some defense. Maybe it was defense, maybe it was just a really ugly game, but nonetheless, Indiana wins this one. It was 112 to 104, and the 104 points actually ties the fewest that Indiana has given up all season, which was the Chicago Bulls. So, who are we to really complain about this one?
Can't complain at all. And I think, this was a great opportunity for some guys to get some minutes because we did have some injuries that came along with Tyrese Haliburton. Jalen Smith did not play in this game, Facci. So the Pacers had to go back to Obi Toppin in the starting lineup, and I thought Obi Toppin played some pretty good basketball. And in 28 minutes, he was 6 to 10 from the field, 3 of 6 from three, 15 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists. I mean, that is pretty solid basketball there from Obi Toppin. Getting the start, he was also a +3 in the game. So you like seeing that, but once again, 7 guys in double figures for the Pacers, and that is how this team is going to have to win. They've done it with Tyrese Haliburton that way, but they're going to have to do it even more by just being a team that is able to play together and not one person really standing out as the lead scorer, but just a collective group effort from a lot of different guys here tonight. But anybody else you wanted to start off here with a highlight?
First, I'll say strength in numbers. That stat that you mentioned about the 7+ players in double figures. The Pacers are now 11-2.
Yeah.
When they accomplish that, it seems to be that ingredient for the Pacers. So that missing ingredient that we need to have there if you don't have a second star. So one player that I really do want to shout out is Miles Turner. Turner finishes the game with 18 points, 13 boards, 2 blocks, but in the second half, Turner had 10 points and 10 rebounds. I think that was really that second half that they needed, and Turner delivered. I think overall there were some players that played well, but this was a collective effort where the Pacers, you saw an ugly first quarter. You saw a second quarter where they trailed by 1, but they came out the gates hot after halftime. They went on a 10-0 run
Yeah.
and really just never looked back. And I feel like they probably looked in the mirror and they probably said, "Guys, are we about to lose to Washington again?"
Yeah.
And that was enough to wake this team up, and I'm happy that it did.
They definitely needed to win this game. I mean, this is a team that is not playing good basketball. They were 6-30, I believe, heading into the game. So,
Ugh.
and one of those wins came against Indiana, which just makes you sick to your stomach already because the Pacers were just
Imagine buying
embarrassed.
tickets for that game and sitting in the stands
I
like
will
I
say
did.
this:
That was
thank God
rough.
you weren't in attendance for this one. I
No,
mean, would we have won the game? I don't know. It would be a question. I think we did.
would have been close.
I think past history says probably not, but I mean, you can never say never, right? I mean, the
Yeah,
curse can
it's
be
true.
broken at any time, but
Has to
yeah,
be.
I got this question posed to me from my friends David and Carson. We're just recently on this podcast in a group text message, and it was like Nimhard really struggled tonight.
You did.
Just 1 of 8 from the field, 5 turnovers, 2 points, 5 assists, 2 steals. He was just kind of all over the place. And then you look at TJ McConnell, 14 points, 8 assists, 2 steals, +7 in the game. Do you think the Pacers should start TJ McConnell over Andrew Nimhard with Tyrese Haliburton now?
I don't. I don't. I know that sometimes it makes sense to say, hey, like put your best players in the starting lineup, but I like what McConnell brings off the bench. I feel like he can change a game. Sometimes
Yes.
it's hard to change a game from the very, second the game starts, but I feel like when McConnell comes in, he disrupts some things. He does things a little bit differently. I feel like it changes the pace of his team. So I like him in that role off the bench, compared to in that starting lineup. And I do think tonight was a big opportunity for Nemhard to be that leading point guard, and I felt like he just did not deliver.
Yeah, and I mean, it's funny that you said that because I literally said the exact same thing. I said Nimhard's one of those guys that I don't really feel like he can impact the game with
Yeah,
being the energizer, but energizer bunny, however you say
yeah,
that.
You got it.
Man, it's late right now, ladies and
It
gentlemen. I
is.
apologize. But it's one of those things where I feel like McConnell can kind of get a read of how the game's going and
Mhm.
knows when he needs to intensify that type of energy in a game. And I think that that's really important for what the Pacers need because him and Ben have played really well together too. And I don't think we can dismiss that. I think that Andrew and Ben have not been the greatest combination together when they play together in those few minutes that they played this year. So I still prefer TJ McConnell off the bench for those specific reasons you said. I just think that some guys are better suited in that role, and they just know what it takes to kind of bring that extra juice and just be ready. And sometimes it's harder for guys to get into a rhythm when coming off the bench versus starting.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that all plays out, and we'll see if they end up making any changes. But I would be kind of surprised if they did. But getting Obi Toppin into the starting lineup, I think that does provide a little bit of more offense than had Jalen Smith started, only because I feel like this Pacers team, without Tyrese Haliburton in the starting lineup, they are going to miss some offensive scoring. And where are they getting that from? I think that's going to be the question mark moving forward for this, the next 2 weeks when Tyrese is out and they're on this 6 game road trip. So, you talked about Miles Turner kind of leading the way, but Bruce Brown really stepped up in this game, Facci. 16 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists, a steal, and a block. I felt like he was very impactful, and he wasn't really pressing either. 5 of 11 from the field, 1 of 5 from three, 5 of 5 from the free throw line. So in 27 minutes, I felt like Bruce Brown really stepped up and kind of showed what being a veteran means. And that's what it's going to take is you're going to need a lot of leadership from your veterans.
It's funny because someone had tweeted at me maybe at halftime, like, "Get Bruce Brown out of here! Like this is pathetic. Like we want him off the team." And it's just like all of a sudden he had a great third quarter, and it was like, "Oh wow!" Before you know it, he had a really good game. I mean, he
Yeah.
he truly did. So in the third quarter, I mean, by halftime, Bruce had 7 points, 6 boards, 6 assists. I just felt like he was very balanced. I thought he scored 5 points in that third quarter. Just after halftime, I felt like he really just was calm, cool, collected, and what the Pacers needed. This is and also let's factor in 0 turnovers in this
Yeah.
game. I feel like this is now another performance, what we talked about the other night, that he has stepped up when there's been no Tyrese Haliburton. And I think that he plays better, he has more responsibilities, I guess, when Halliburton's not out there. And I felt like Bruce Brown grabbed you 9 boards tonight. I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. At 6'4", he pulled down 9 rebounds. That was awesome. The Pacers needed that because this was a team that was getting out rebounded at halftime by 5 boards. They were getting crushed on the offensive glass. It was actually 11-4. And in the second half, just overall as a rebounding team, they out rebounded Washington by 15, and the Pacers had 9 offensive rebounds in the second half to Washington's just 3. So I just feel like when you mentioned Obi Toppin before, Obi had 7 rebounds. That's what you need. You need guys to step up and play their role a little bit better. And I feel that like Obi and Bruce Brown were guys that really brought it on the glass tonight. Turner with 13 rebounds. Like I mentioned, 10 in the second half. Awesome stuff. But for the rest of that, I thought that Neesmith struggled from the field, just
Yeah.
3 of 9. This is someone who has always benefited from having Tyrese Haliburton out there, just like every player does. So that was tough to see. And then we already touched about, for Andrew Nemhard, just a rough shooting night. So I feel like Nemhard, Neesmith, they combined to go 4 of 17 from the field. A forgettable performance for those two.
Yeah, and hopefully they bounce back. I think those are two guys that can bounce back, but they still bring it defensively, so that feels really good. Now we can kind of go to the bench here, and once again, the Pacers bench did get the advantage over the Washington Wizards, outscoring them 51-27, if I did my math correctly, and they shot the ball pretty well outside of Buddy Hield and Ben Mathurin, who were a combined 4 of 18, and I will say that Buddy Hield was 0 of 5 from the field tonight. First time I think where he hasn't scored all season. I think this is the first game he has not scored a point. Surprisingly, though, he had the best plus minus of anybody on the team with a
That was
plus 12.
surprising. I know.
So the plus minus is always like a hit or miss stat, and it's not
It
the like
is.
the most telling stat. But Buddy Hill just kind of he was fine tonight, just wasn't hitting shots. I think every outside of hitting shots, he was playing pretty good basketball. But the one guy we really want to give a shout out to is someone that we haven't got to talk about very much this season, and that's Jordan Nwora. Jordan Nwora gets minutes because Jalen Smith is out and Tyrese Halliburton's out. So there's a little bit more of an opening there on that 10-man rotation, and he gets the minutes. And then obviously, uh, Jarris Walker, he was out tonight with the upper respiratory sickness, and I think he was like recalled from from the Mad Ants today with Ben Shepherd. So those two guys did not get into the game, but Jordan Nwora, 4-7 from the field, 1 for 2 from three, had a beautiful cut that resulted in the layup, and then he also had a dunk. And I forget, I think it was over Daniel Gafford, if I'm not mistaken.
It
So
was.
he had a monster dunk in the third quarter. And Rick Carlisle had a lot of high praise for him, but it's one of those things where you just see this guy who I think there's a handful of teams that could really use a guy like Jordan Nwora in their rotation. Their rotation's pretty thin, and this is a guy that could really provide some consistent minutes. He's not been able to do that this year with the Pacers being so deep. He's like the 12th, 13th man on this roster. But when called upon, he delivered, and it just kind of shows the true professionalism of a Jordan Nwora and what he can bring to the table when he is called upon.
Jordan Nwora with first quarter minutes. I
Yeah.
mean, when I saw him stand up, I was like, wait a minute. I had to like rub my eyes a little bit. I was like, Jordan Ward's getting in the first quarter of a game that's like, the minutes actually matter. So that was awesome to see because I've always loved him ever since the Pacers, acquired him. I felt like this man can play, but given the situation that you mentioned, roughly the 12th man, more than that, whatever it may be, he hasn't had that opportunity. He's not really going to have that opportunity. So I feel like he needed to seize the opportunity when provided. And that's what he did tonight. 9 points, 7 of them came in that third quarter when the Pacers really were able to push ahead. And I just felt like he made good plays. I want to see him succeed. Hopefully there's an opportunity where he is able to get some minutes, maybe get his trade value up for another team where he can play a bigger role. But awesome stuff, staying ready when called upon, because I can't remember what game it was off the top of my head, but the last time I feel like we saw Jordan Nwora play some meaningful minutes, it didn't really work out well. I felt
Mhm.
like
It was
he
the
he
Raptors
shot
game.
the ball. Yeah, he shot the ball pretty poorly in that game, and it was like, man, this is a guy who had been waiting to really get out there. Yeah, so he was 0 for 5 in that game. So great to see him. When needed, called upon, he was ready. Jarris Walker, another one of those unfortunate, like, I understand you're dealing with something, but like this is actually a game that I felt that you could have played in. And
Yeah.
I feel like whether it was the G League Winter Classic or it was tonight, just unfortunate timing because Jalen Smith was out, could have led to some playing time. But hey, hopefully he gets better and hopefully we see him back out there soon.
I mean, that second unit with Jordan Morrow has a lot of offensive firepower. You got Jordan,
Yeah.
you got Buddy and Ben with TJ and Ijax running the pick and roll with all those shooters around him, and then Ben kind of being a guy that can be the ball handler. And I think Jordan and Buddy are both good with moving off, moving without the basketball too. Like Jordan had some great cuts, Buddy always has great cuts. So I think that could be like not a long term thing, but if it's like a short term thing where those guys have to play a little bit more together, why not let Jordan Moore get some run in Atlanta? He had a career high 26 points in a quarter. I think it was the second quarter against the Hawks. Maybe he gets hot again. Hot Atlanta for Jordan Moore. Hey, why not try it out? The Pacers need something like that. And we know this Hawks team can't stop a nosebleed. So
No.
let's see what happens on the game Friday. But I want to talk about Ben Mathurin here because Ben Mathurin, we talked about a little bit, didn't shoot the ball particularly well tonight, but 8 of 8 from the free throw line, Facci, and that was 33% of the Pacers' total attempts as a team. And one of the things that I think Ben Mathurin does so well, not only does he draw contact on these fouls, but he gets into the paint, and it does kind of open up for other guys to get some outside looks. So one thing that you can count on with TJ McConnell and Ben Mathurin together is those guys are going to find ways to get into the paint and bully their way in there to put pressure on the defense. And so even when he's not having a great efficient night, just 4 of 13 from the field, he's still able to be impactful by getting himself to the free throw line and then getting himself into the paint. I will say the one thing I would like to see from Ben a little bit more is not complaining when he doesn't get a call, because he'll sit there and complain for about 2, 3
Yeah.
seconds instead of getting back on defense. But I'll live with it because he is drawing fouls, probably the best person to draw fouls on this team. And he also had 7 rebounds because he is a guy that can be physical on the glass when he wants to be. He just gets a little lackadaisical. But I thought that the Pacers they're going to need him. We talked about how they're going to need him to be someone that steps up in the absence of Tyrese Haliburton. But once again, I think that Rick Carlisle is handling this just absolutely correctly by not force feeding him and not making him be a bigger focal point of the offense than keeping him in the role that he's in and allowing him to kind of flourish with that second unit and then close games as a closing five.
It definitely keeps him very much involved. For Mathurin, just one made field goal in the second half. So It was tough because he had 10 at halftime, finishes the game with 16, but he was still a +6. So, it was good that his rough shooting night did not take this team out of what they were trying to do. You mentioned the 7 rebounds. Awesome. Hey, if you're struggling from the field, how else can you contribute? On the
Yeah.
glass, I thought it was awesome. He was another one of those guys that I should have lumped in before of Obi, Bruce Brown, and Ben Mathurin really up their game as it relates to rebounds. That's part of the reason why the Pacers had 54 rebounds in this game. But for Mathurin, like you mentioned it, getting to the free throw line. For years, it felt like you had Sabonis in the paint, and then it felt like no one was coming in the paint for this Pacers team. And I just feel like Mathurin continuously puts the pressure on the defense. And the more that he's driving, it'll open up for other players. I know he had 0 assists tonight, but still, it just makes the Washington defense have to really protect the paint. And Mathurin goes a perfect 8 for 8 from the field. So good,
Free
good
throw
for the
line.
free throw line. Yes, quite different from the field. 4 of 13. But the other guy that I want to shout out is the birthday boy himself,
That's
Isaiah
right.
Jackson. So with no Jalen Smith, no problem. In 17 minutes, he had 12 points on 4 of 4 shooting. Found himself once again getting another whistle, not a good whistle, a flagrant foul
Mm.
whistle. But Jackson, I don't know if he's going too hard, whatever it is. Hey, this is back-to-back games where he's gotten at least a technical or a flagrant, but it is his birthday, and I was happy that he was able to have a good performance tonight.
He's been playing pretty well. There's no doubt
3
about it.
blocks as well.
How many blocks?
Can't forget about that. 3.
3, okay. That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think
Yeah.
he's been playing pretty good basketball, and I think Kalen Cooper brought up a good point, like, putting Jalen at the starting 4 was more so a way to find minutes for Ijax, and we even saw him and Jalen play a little bit together, I think, a couple weeks ago against the Rockets, and we're just kinda seeing him evolve as a player, and, he's gotta be a little bit more under control, like you talked about, like, that foul was a little bit unnecessary against Bilal
Yeah.
Coulibaly. He did reach for the ball, but he did kinda grab him around the shoulder neck area, so it's like, you gotta be careful with doing that, like, that's just gonna be an automatic flagrant foul, and even when you have momentum going, like, you cannot allow that to kinda stop momentum or just give the other team some opportunities to score some baskets, but no harm, no foul. I mean, it, it was a foul, but,
It
it didn't
definitely
end up
was.
hurting the Pacers too much. But I will say this, he had a different hairstyle tonight. I think it was the birthday hair, so had the piggy buns, whatever we wanna call that, the pigtails, so congrats to, congrats to Ijax for just rocking some new hair and just trying to showcase, "Hey, it's my birthday." Something a little different tonight, but it's crazy to think he just turned 22 years old, and there are so many guys that have been getting drafted that are older than that, and he's just kinda showing like, "All right, I'm growing into this player, and I'm maturing as a young man, and I'm only 22 years old, so, like, don't count me out too soon because I'm still pretty young and I'm still developing." And I think everything that we're seeing emotionally from him also has to do with just his age, and that's gonna come over time, I think, as he just matures and gets a little bit more composed and just a little bit more under control with controlling those emotions and not letting them get the best of him. So I'm excited for him, and I mean, like you said, happy birthday, Ijax. What a great way to get a victory, a great way to celebrate a birthday by getting a victory over the lowly Washington Wizards.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm happy for Isaiah, and, like, for reference, Oscar Tshiebwe is 24 years old. He's a rookie. So,
Oscar, my
Isaiah,
guy.
it's just like, look, Isaiah, he's I'm looking at his stats right now, and nothing jumps off the page. He's averaging. It's honestly been his numbers pretty much actually are the same each year, but he's doing it in less minutes, less touches. He's just been a far more efficient player, and I think that he's playing to his strengths. He never tries to do too much. You're not seeing these like free throw line jumpers or 3-point attempts or anything like that. He's just, handles business in the paint. I think he's always been a really good shot blocker. And I like what he brings to the table. The 17 minutes made him count. He was another one of those Pacers off the bench with a positive plus minus. So overall, I think that this was a game that the Pacers found a way to win with 112 points. Alex, I looked it up. That is the fewest points the Pacers have scored in a win
Mhm.
this year. So it was not pretty, but they got the job done. No one will remember down the line how many they scored. They'll just remember, did you get the win or not?
A win is a win, and that's all that matters to me. I don't really care how the Pacers are racking up wins at this point.
Nope.
any win without Tyrese Haliburton is a good win to me.
Yes.
So he is the heart and soul of this team. He carries this team on his back, and everything runs through him, specifically on the offensive side of things. Now, defensively, he doesn't, necessarily hold his own weight there, but he has so much weight to carry offensively that it does kind of balance things out.
Yeah.
So it probably even tips the scale still a little bit more towards the offense because of how dynamic he is and like the MVP level season he's having. So, you cannot replace what Tyrese Haliburton brings to the team, but when you're playing a team like Washington, I think it's a great start for this Pacers group without Tyrese to kind of figure some things out. They're going to have to change a lot of different roles in what they do because Tyrese carried the load for so many guys. So this is a perfect opportunity to kind of use that as a test example on a team that's not as talented potentially as some of these other games they're going to have coming up here in the next 2 weeks. So I'm happy for the Pacers and what they were able to do, and it was just a great group effort from so many different guys. And we've already talked about pretty much everybody, and I think that it's just really good to see how this team responded without Tyrese Haliburton. Now they're basically, 2-0 since Halliburton's gone down with that injury, and that's not going to get any easier because we know the schedule coming up is brutal. But I'm very encouraged by the way the Pacers were able to handle business, good, bad, or ugly. It was a win. It's a W in the win column that matters the most. And it's just as important, of the 22 games they've won as the game they won against Boston at home to get to the in-season tournament and go to Vegas. I mean, that's honestly how it counts against the record book. So you have to look at it that way. And I'm thoroughly impressed with how they were able to pull this one out, specifically after getting out to such a slow start.
Yeah, I mean, look, for being in the building last time when the Pacers lost to Washington, it felt like the Wizards were hitting everything.
Yeah.
In that game, they shot 57% from the field, 48% from three. They dropped 137 on the Pacers. It honestly kind of felt like a low point in the season of like, oh my God, this might be the worst loss because it's just like of how bad the Wizards had been. And the Pacers, you felt they were a much better team than the Wizards, and that did not show that night. That night, Kuzma had 31. Tonight, just 11 points on 4 of 15 shooting. Last time, the Wizards had 48 bench points. It felt like everybody was getting in there. It was a scoring party. Just 27 tonight for the bench for the Wizards. So I feel like the Pacers really tightened up on defense, and they put their best effort forward in terms of what they could do on the defensive side of the ball. And offense, I feel like that'll come. I don't think all of a sudden the Pacers are going to go from this team that now is scoring in the low, 100s. I think they'll be fine. It'll balance out. I think they could still score, 120 points without Tyrese on most nights. But if you can hold anybody in today's NBA to 104 points, you did something real good defensively, and that is what the Pacers did tonight.
Absolutely. And I want to end things on this note. Obi Toppin, the last 9 games since the starting lineup change, 52.4% from the field, but Facci, 50% from 3.
Woo.
17 of 34, the last 4 games, Facci. 3 of 6 tonight, 3 of 4 the previous night, 2 of 4 the night before that, and 3 of 5 the night before that. That is 11 of 21. He is absolutely killing it right. Oh, excuse me, 11 of 19. Sorry.
Even better.
11 of 19. So he's even better than what I just said. So he has been shooting the ball really well. And we talked about it. Is it a fluke? Is it a real thing? It's like this guy, I think his career high is like 35%, something like that in New York last year. And the fact that he's shooting 40% or higher this season and has got 50% of the last 9 games, I've been hard on him a little bit, but I think that the shooting has really translated, and I think that it might be here to stay. I think he's really taken pride and ownership in developing that three-point shot and being consistent with it. So want to close things out here with a shout out to Obi Toppin, the guy that you were going nuts over when we got him in the offseason. And right here is a good reason why. Really kind of showcasing what he can do offensively.
I think he has a big opportunity with Tyrese out to step up and be a little bit more of a consistent player. And I also do think in the second half of the year, I think he's going to put a far more of an effort into rebounding. I think we've seen that lately from Obi, that when he made the move to start the bench, it was like, all right, you got to bring something else to the table. It's been a little bit inconsistent, but I think that at times, we saw against Chicago, 12 boards, against the Knicks, 8 boards against Milwaukee, 7 tonight against Washington. but sometimes there's still some inconsistent play in between there on the glass. I think the second half of the year, he's going to be a far more consistent on the rebounding. And if that 3-point shot can even stay in the range of 38 to 40%, it's going to be awesome. So I'm happy for Obi. Really feels like he's getting comfortable right now with this Pacers team, and it takes a while to build chemistry. So shout out to Obi.
Absolutely, Facci. Well, let's go ahead and close things out here. Tell the people where they can find us at on social media.
Absolutely. So you can find us on Twitter at PacersPod STP. You can find Alex on Twitter at AlexGoldenNBA. I can be found on Twitter at _FACCI. You can find us on Instagram at PacersPod STP. You can find us on Facebook at Setting the Pace. You can find us on TikTok at Setting the Pace. And Alex, tell them where they can check us out on YouTube.
Ladies and gentlemen, go to youtube.com/Setting the Pace, a Pacers podcast, where you can find all of our video recaps here from the post-game show. So I hope you guys enjoy that. But Facci, if people haven't already, they need to make sure they give us a 5-star rating and review wherever they get their, or wherever they listen to the podcast at, because that does help other people find the show. And then just quickly, a shout out to the IU women's basketball team beating Penn State 75-67, and then the Butler Bulldogs getting an upset victory today over number 11 Marquette 69-62 on the road. So some hometown favorites here pulling out some nice victories. But Facci, if you're excited, the Pacers have won 8 of 9 games since making the starting lineup change. Then please hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go Pacers!